For McDonald's and Ream Hot Water, Triple M rocks footy. It is the Sunday rub. I am Jay Clark, and I just get very excited when I'm joined by these two gentlemen. We got a fourth stringer who's running a little late, it must be said, as he dashes back from the Channel 9 offices. Of course, I speak of Nathan Brown, so he'll be here soon. But this man, he played for Carlton and Collingwood. You can just go back and check out his YouTube highlights, and he sat on heads, he kicked goals from boundaries. Ross Lyon said he was the best player in the game, and his absolute peak of his powers. It's Dale Thomas. Hello to you, Dale.
Yes, g'day, boys. I tell you what, Jay, I'm loving the fact that you are doing that at the moment. For whatever research purposes it is, and we probably don't need to go into it, a lot of the highlights he's watching for somebody else are coming back to how good I was. So I really appreciate that.
I just like going back through your back catalogue.
Oh, it's all right, isn't it?
Just coincidentally. And you absolutely were just a superstar, Daisy.
Bums on seats.
Oh, my God, they loved you. and speaking of love, this man, they would just come for him on the... He would rack him up, contested possessions and tackles, of course. Took a few kick-ins, but I think that's overrated, Joey, because you were an absolute superstar too. Hello to you, Lee Montagna.
Yeah, hello, Jay-Z. Yeah, hijacked my chat about the winning an Anzac Day medal. Daisy's comments about the kick-ins, and that stole the limelight. But nice of you to step in as the self-appointed vice-captain and just take the reins with our skipper just not here to start the show.
It's hard. It's like being a number
Well,
three.
me now.
It's hard being a number three batsman because you don't know whether you're going to be in for the third ball of the first over or whether you're going to be in 3 hours later. Hello to you, Nathan Brown.
Good to be here,
Thanks
Jay-Z.
for finally joining
Always
us.
good to be here.
How was the Sunday footy show? Good one, though? Funny
It was
today?
a good one today. Yeah, mediocre was good.
Oh,
Who'd you rip into? You might have got in there today.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, I think
hello.
something about you getting your dates wrong around Max
Easter?
Holmes.
Oh, no.
And Damo sort of corrected you on it, so it was.
2019.
It was a funny moment.
Rather than
yeah.
2022.
It was a good one. Yeah.
Any more Captain Obvious stuff like last week?
No, we're all good to go. What are we talking about?
You're the host.
Plenty of footy. Go on, Jay.
You've started, mate.
Yeah.
You've started, so keep going.
Hey, at the end of the year, we hand out all sorts of awards, don't we?
We do.
In the
Yes.
media. And we don't like to always make it about us, but sometimes we do, Brandon, because we've got a lot of good chat about footy coming up. But sometimes we just need to turn the microscope back on. And I'm telling you, what you're about to hear now might make this man the best special comments analyst of the year in 2024. This might be the best call we heard in football this year.
8 of the 9 years, the team that has spiked have actually been a really strong finals team a year or two prior. It's not the teams that haven't played finals. So I can see Geelong being the team that spiked back. And I think at some stage this year, we'll be talking about them in premiership contention.
That's a good call. That's a good call. You go early
That's too
and you
positive,
go hard.
too positive and too complimentary for Triple M. But
Jeez, it's a good call, though.
well, as I said, there's a bit of research behind it, Daisy, and generally there's always a team that spikes into the top 4 from outside the 8, which we know it's happened, I think, 9 of the last 10 years. And what I was getting at was it's always a team that's played finals a year or two before, the team that spikes. It's a team that just has one dip year. So I sort of put my thinking hat on, and there were 3 teams that fit the bill. It was Fremantle, the Bulldogs and Geelong that fit that bill of being good teams and spiked. And I
recall picking Geelong out of there.
And I went with the Cats. Exactly right. So it was just a bit of research. But do you think they're the premiership favourites now, Jay-Z? Or
I got them level pegging with the Giants, who probably have that explosion and that absolute talent and the run through the midfield, which would be a fascinating tactical battle if GWS came down to Geelong, because you got the Geelong structure and defense and Tom Stewart sweeping versus the Orange Tsunami. How would if you had to
beat them down there last year?
Who dispatched Brisbane with 3 of their best players out as well.
They're extraordinary, the Giants. How do you slow that wave? How would you see that playing out, that strategic battle? If that was the grand final and you had to put it in a time capsule round 7, that's what it looks like. Could Chris Scott do it, who Lordo said was the best coach in the Cape? But we heard that last week. How would they do it?
No, I don't know if you could stop it. I don't think you can stop an offensive wave like that. I'm not sure. You have to just bring pressure at an unbelievable level to force them to turn the ball over and cough up handball. So that's probably the only way. And I think at the moment, Brandy, we're not seeing many teams able to do that to the Giants to slow them down.
No, and they are genuinely quick, and they've got players just everywhere. Like even Callahan, who Stevie J told us, watch this kid at the start of last season. I mean, he had 32 disposals, and he's a running machine, uses it well. So they don't have a weakness at the moment, the Giants. I look at them, and maybe injury is the only thing that can get them, but they've got winners on every line.
But if you're going to have to try and stymie that, if a back line or a defensive or a coaching group is going to try and stymie that, the Cats, who are unbeaten after 7 rounds, they take on Melbourne this weekend. I think this is the round of the year coming up. It is an extraordinary round. You got the showdown on Thursday night. Carlton play Collingwood, the traditional rivals on Friday night.
Wow, that's big.
What
100
colours will you
game
be
each.
wearing?
Whose home game is it?
Carlton.
Carlton. I'll go to their President's function this week.
On Saturday, you've got the Battle of the Bridge, Sydney versus GWS. You've got North Melbourne versus St Kilda, which I think is fascinating. Melbourne versus Geelong. West Coast Essendon, which could potentially go either way. Then Richmond Fremantle, Bulldogs Hawthorn, Brisbane Gold Coast. It is an absolute humdinger this round. And I absolutely cannot wait for it. But the Cats now undefeated after 7 rounds. Patrick Dangerfield, though, is the news item here because it looks like he could be missing for 4 to 5 weeks. It's his second hamstring of the year. You'd think they're going to be incredibly cautious from a football club.
Is that a 6-weeker now? When you do a second one, is that 6 weeks? Because at the start of the year, he said they'd changed the way they trained and they're only doing 2 sessions a week, not 3, but the 2 were really high intensity, a lot more sprinting than previous years.
Which I think is going to hold them in good stead. I think that's allowed them to get to where they are so far this year and probably what's going to give them a chance to win the flag later in the year. So if there's a few casualties, sometimes you have to wear that. Maybe he does do another training block and set himself for the second half of the year like he tried to do last year. But, yeah, it's unfortunate for Danger now. He's got that history.
They've learned how to win without him, which is the positive. So not generally required. When he comes back in, going to give them a boost, star of a player and all of those things. But at the moment, it's not really an issue.
He played
At what point, sorry, Jay, at what point do you tag Jeremy Cameron? Because most clubs just allow him to go up and they drop off and go, okay, we'll set up behind the football. But him and Grime Myers both play a similar role. They're very, very different sizes, obviously. But at what stage do you go, okay, I'm going to do the old-fashioned tag. If you go up to the ball, if you go up to the stoppage or you get behind that stoppage, I'm going to go with you because the damage he does back the other way. And because the game is so frantic at the moment, he loses players. And it's very hard to keep an eye on when you're looking around going, am I in the right spot? The ball's coming down. You've got to have a look. Where's Jeremy Cameron coming from as well? It's so much to think about to set up properly and then to go to him. Almost you just have to say, I'm going to go across and I'm not going to allow him to do what he's doing. It's
easier said than done, Brandy, because that sounds good in theory. But if he starts as a forward and then goes up to the midfield and brings a defender with him, all then Geelong need to do is spit a midfielder out of the stoppages and drift forward, and they're going to have no opponent to pick up on because they're going to have 5-on-5. So it's a lot of complexities to it. It's easier said than done. And if it was that easy, teams would do it. But that's the challenge because Chris Scott can manipulate other matchups to get what they want if they decide to do that. So you're right, though. We touched on it on the podcast as well. I spoke about him as my good. He's unstoppable at the moment. The way that he's playing, he's the best player in the competition.
Can you stop him with a winger? Allow the +1 to be there, and if he goes up, you just tell your corridor winger, don't worry about your opponent. We'll keep our halfback looking at him. The winger, your responsibility is Jeremy Cameron anytime he leaves that stoppage.
Good thought. And that seems you're going to have to start thinking about different ways of doing it because you're right, he's cutting teams up.
We talked a lot about Buddy Franklin over his career. There is a bit of Buddy Franklin about what he's doing upfield. He's an extraordinary player. Hey, the rookie draft is coming up May 29. You're probably busy.
Mid-season.
What did I say? Rookie draft.
Yeah, the
mid-season rookie draft is coming up on May 29. So you be busy, Joey. And we haven't spoken about this, digging to try and find a diamond in the rough, etc. Now, I find this quite amazing. But is there a universe where Isaac Smith, who we'd miss on a Thursday night, could be picked up in the mid-season draft? Now
Straight to Brisbane, you reckon?
He came in, I don't know what club. He came in off a run, and I think he ran...
Back to Geelong?
Maybe. He ran 1K in about 2:45, which is like Olympic trial stuff, right? That's incredibly fast.
When did he do this?
This week.
Right.
I think he did it on Thursday or Friday.
He needs to
Thursday.
eat more donuts.
Thursday. So we had him in on Triple M on Thursday night. Just try and join the dots on this for me. And his phone is lighting up as we speak, so perhaps someone is already... but you're staying quite fit, aren't you, Isaac?
Yeah, I am. Well, that'd be silly not to if they're in the premiership window.
So I just wonder whether there might be a bit of something there because
Is there any flame flickering at all? Any possibility that you'd come back?
I would say 99% no, unless there was 5 flags. I always wanted 5 flags. That was my. Everyone has a goal in footy, and mine was 5, and I finished on 4. So
You underachieved.
you just never know.
You know the talent pool, Joey.
That comment is genuine bullshit.
Yeah,
even
what
for
about
Triple
that?
M.
Give us a spell.
Even
Isaac.
for Triple
I want
M is
5.
self-promotion.
You greedy bugger.
Are we shutting this down, or do you think he has the running power and capability to still play at the top
Well,
level? Would a
You-
club
you
consider
are
him?
in sort of somewhat recruitment opposition.
yep.
Would you? Would you roll the dice?
Well, he's saying he would only go to a team in premiership contention,
So
right?
who's
So that's Geelong, which clearly won't go back to
The
Geelong. The
Giants.
Giants don't need him. Sydney don't need him. Melbourne,
Ooh.
Port Adelaide,
Carlton?
Carlton.
Him and Blake Acres on a wing. Oh, okay.
Don't know.
He's
Interesting.
35. I think it's an interesting
It's a long
one.
shot. It
But he-
could be worse. There's worse players on the list at some clubs.
Name
the
them.
40 to 40.
Yeah, I'll name them all.
Name
Name
them.
them one by
You know,
one.
the 40th, 42nd, 43rd player at every list that probably most people wouldn't even know who they are. You could do worse.
Because you talk about the age and the age profile, and the Cats doing it with the veterans. How are we seeing the lay of the land at Collingwood at the moment? So a month ago, Steelside Bottom tells Glenn McFarlane at the Herald Sun, of course, I want to play on next season. Jeremy Howe to consider, Brodie Myercheck, of course, Scotty Pendlebury will play on if he wants to. How difficult is it, broadly, Daisy, to transition or tap on the shoulder your premiership veteran champions?
I'd imagine from a club point of view, it'd be one of the hardest things you have to go through because these players are probably still, and when it happens, and we've seen it throughout, are probably good enough to still hold a spot in the side. It's whether or not they're keeping somebody else who needs to get some games under their belt. But the value of leadership of these on-field and off-field of the older blokes, you can't, well, it's worth its weight in gold. And the fact that a lot of sides, and especially down the bottom, wind up these older players to get kids in and to gift them games, I'm not sure that's the right method. The game should be something that you really value and you earn every one of them rather than just taking the spot of a bloke because he's old. We're an ageist industry. I don't think you need to wind anyone up. If they're happy to go on with an understanding and a clear direction that, hey, if your form's not good enough, you'll be in the twos. We need you to bring a good attitude. As long as it's open and honest, I think there's a spot for all of the older players to go around at least one more year.
Be incredibly hard unless if you're Alistair Clarkson, who just likes to get him out the door.
Jordy Lewis still hasn't recovered, I think. How did it play out with you, Daisy?
I was at Tasha's Nonna's funeral and I got a text from Stephen Silvani saying, what's your address after a list management meeting? I wrote back, the meeting went that well, did it? So he came round and just delivered the bullet. Him and Mick Agresta.
Was that expected?
Look, I was pretty content that it was going to be a 50-50 decision. I'd had 14 years in the caper. If you had given me the career that I had at the start of it, I would have taken it. I was pretty realistic of where the group was at, where I was at. Was I playing good enough footy to go around again for another year? Absolutely I was. But was that the best decision for the club going forward? They think not, and it's hard to knock where they are at the minute.
I got a text from Alan Richardson saying, I'm just in the area. Are you home? I might pop in. I thought, hang on, Richo, you live in Warrandyte. I'm in Albert Park. I don't think you just happen to be in the area. You're popping over to come and tell me
Albert
something.
Park must be
And-
nice, though.
Tell us about that night when he got you all over for a barbecue when you sat around the fire.
The pizzas.
The pizzas.
Yeah, he ordered 18 pizzas for
And
five,
nobody
for five
turned up.
blokes.
And, good afternoon to you, Richo. Was that torture? I remember when, because you and Nick both didn't have an answer for your football club.
Yeah.
Was that torturous? That
It was. I like Daisy. I sort of knew where it sat. It was 50-50. You hadn't had a contract. They were discussing where it was at with trying to get some games into young players. St Kilda were going through a rebuild. So I always knew it was going to be a 50-50 call. I still thought I could play. And in the end, they go a different direction. And that's just the way it is. 95% of players get tapped on the shoulder. I reckon in my time, I've known maybe 2 players that have retired off their own bat.
Who are they?
Lenny Hayes, I'm pretty sure, was asked if he wanted to play one more year. And he said, no, I'm done. That might be the only one. I reckon even Robert Harvey, when he was 38, probably wanted to go one more year and they had to have the conversation and say, Harves, got to finish up at some stage.
You've got to have the conversation with the champions, though, at least a month out for the fans. They need certainty. Don't worry about doing it. Oh, we'll see where we go with the draft and whatnot. The fans, if they do and are to retire, they need a proper send-off. And that is one of the great things about the game, rather than just let them slide off into the distance.
Collingwood's form has been soft, Joey. How are you assessing the lay of the land there?
Yeah.
Where have you got the Pies pegged?
Oh, they might play finals. I haven't got them in the top 4 or 5 teams at the moment, just because that inconsistency in effort, which you've got to bring week in, week out. At their age and after winning the flag and where they're at, they probably don't have the consistency like they did last year with their effort. Now, they could still get that. I think it might be hard, but they're going to be around
They
the
were
mark.
the number one pressure side the last 3 weeks, and then it was a pretty good game against the
Yeah.
Bombers who were up and about. So the first 3 games of the season, yeah, a bit inconsistent, but since then they've been pretty solid.
What do
Solid.
you Brownie, do you think they back them all in again? How are you seeing?
Do you think they can win the flag, Collingwood?
Side bottom.
Well, I think they're still in the conversation, actually.
How?
I'm not going to rule Collingwood out at the moment. They're probably, 5th or 6th in the running at the moment, but they can get the job done. They've got the players and the game plan and the attitude to get it done. Number 1 pressure side the last 3 weeks, so why not? What's the first game on today, Joey?
Gold Coast, West Coast, which I think will be interesting. You're giving West Coast any chance, Daisy? You just rolled your eyes, none at all.
Not with Harley Reid out. I don't understand why you would rest somebody like that after last week. Just
Maybe
get the
we saw.
momentum going.
Maybe what if you saw?
Got a big
Give me
picture
a
in
spell.
mind. Got a big picture in mind. But that'd be a good call team. Liam Flanagan, Brett Thomas,
Just
Tommy
plain.
Rockcliffe. Tommy Rockcliffe, isn't he, doing the rounds on the socials?
Was he
Richard
not at
Champion,
Liv?
Belinda Mallon.
What's he doing?
Oh, he's
Tommy Rockcliffe.
posting all these photos with celebs around the Live Golf and then saying they all want photos with him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, a bit of a
bit of
reverse
humour.
gag for Tommy Rockcliffe. Okay, it's time for...
This is Jay-Z's Big Three.
We touched on the Cats already, undefeated through 7 rounds. Joey called the pants off that pre-season prediction. Well done to you, mate. But Vossy, it's fair to say, the coach of the Carlton Football Club, they were outstanding in the clearances. I think they won the first 6 centre clearances, dominated field territory, the Blues, for the bulk of the game, had 21 more inside 50s, but it was the sharpness of the Cats in attack led by Jeremy Cameron who got the job done. Michael Voss, this is as grumpy as I've heard him after a loss for some time.
I don't want us to settle that it was a good effort or it was close. It was unacceptable. And we've got to be better. So Geelong is currently top of the ladder, but we'd like to think we benchmark ourselves off our own standards, and we fell below those tonight on defending. We conceded whatever it was in terms of the score. I can't even know, 118 points. That's just too much. So we scored well, and that was probably entertaining for everybody. So we made it a good game in that way, but we didn't get some important moments right, and we didn't defend when we need to for long enough. And they're a good football team.
He's been flat on the defence a little bit in the past couple of weeks. Vossy, what's your interpretation of that, Daisy? Do you feel like Carlton has absolutely proven themselves as a top 4 side, genuine contender this year yet?
Oh, I couldn't love anything more of what he said just then. I couldn't love that anymore. The fact that he said, effectively, this was our chance to make a statement and we fell down in critical areas of the game for critical stages. He knows that. That wasn't lost on him. And I think that's a great message to send to the group and to the fans out there as well, as we consider ourselves a genuine premiership chance this year. They're playing good enough football, but that was the opportunity to make a real statement. So we did take them more seriously. They're in this premiership race at the moment, right up to their eyeballs.
Couldn't agree more. Love the high standards from Michael Voss. He said exactly what you want to hear from a team that think they can win it. They didn't lose any. I didn't lose any respect for Carlton after that performance. I thought it was a really strong performance, the way they played. Now, they just didn't convert their chances. Geelong had one of those days efficiency-wise. Carlton missing 3 of their best 6 defenders, missing 6 of their best teams.
Sard McGovern.
You would
Really
be
strong-
concerned
really
about
strong
the
performance.
62% conversion rate, though. They had
But that's an
21 less
anomaly.
inside
That's
50s.
an anomaly.
But
That's
21
not the norm.
inside 50s. If you
Yeah.
go into any game against any side,
Yep.
21 less inside 50s, you don't expect to win that game.
That's right. So that's why it's a really strong performance from Carlton. If they play that game again, they'd win that 9 times out of 10. So, yes, Geelong off the charts with their efficiency and their ball movement, and Carlton disappointing defensively. There's no one's disagreeing with that. But in regards to the overall picture of the game and the way they played and the chances the Blues had, I think I'll walk away from that thinking Carlton
It's a
absolutely.
positive.
Yeah, if they played them again in a prelim, right now I'd be tipping Carlton.
Would you really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I thought they played just as good a footy and missing 6 of their best.
Vossy
Yep.
knows that you got to play defensive footy to win finals, though,
Yep.
and to go deep. That's why the concerns are there over that scoreline.
The inside 50 numbers, or tackles inside 50s, are interesting. Geelong had 24. Carlton had 24. The Cats only had 8. Is the
What's that? The
tackles
tackles? Yeah,
and-
that's just because the way the game was played. It was slingshot, counter attack, open forward line for
It went into Geelong's
for
half and they
Geelong's-
scored.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that isn't that. Don't they still put the pressure on in that regard? Like, wouldn't they want more out of that Geelong, or
No, that's an anomaly because of the way the game was played. Because it went inside Geelong's
And then they
forward,
just
and then they
scored.
scored.
Yep.
And Carlton got a lot because of a lot of repeat entries and the amount of ball in their forward half. You get more chance to tackle in there. So, everyone's talking about Carlton defensively, but Geelong just conceded 105 points and conceded 60 entries. So
That's without Tom
they wouldn't
Stewart.
they wouldn't be pleased. Yeah, and Carlton were missing McGovern, Sard, and Marchbank from their best team. So I thought it was a pretty even.
It's
even
like
split.
asking Joey, to tackle the day he had 47. When you got the ball that much, you just don't tackle.
You
do
don't. No.
I think we're harsh. He owns the records for contested possessions and tackles throughout that prime
And
2000.
kick-ins. Hey-oh.
Which is interesting. So North Melbourne get touched up again by Adelaide yesterday, 57 points. It was one-way football for the bulk of it. And we did touch on this a little bit earlier, Brownie, but why do you think, what is North Melbourne, how far under par do you think North Melbourne is going at the moment?
I believe they're rock bottom right now.
Why
And I think their list profile, though, is better than what it was 4 years ago. So they've only won 2, 3, maybe 4 games in the last 5 seasons. But you look back at their list 4 years ago, and I don't think they've got anywhere near the players that they do now. So those midfielders will take a long time. What they do lack is some big guys. And Nick Larkey's about the only one, but they lack some genuine height in their defensive end. I think these young guys will take shape, but their list profile is better than what it was 4 years ago, but they're at rock bottom right now.
They're going to attack the free agency market. You'd think hard, North Melbourne. They're trying to keep Cameron Zurhaar to stay with a 5-year deal. I think Luke Davies-Uniacke is a big watch. He comes out of his contract.
He's contracted next year, though.
Next year, yeah. I think there's going to be some enormous 8-figure offers
So
for Luke Davies-Uniacke.
I look at that, and they've got players in the past who they haven't really needed, North Melbourne, because, okay, let's be relevant. Let's get somebody from another club, and there's been multiple players who've got that footy. Do they need Cameron Zurhaar? If they could get a good draft pick for him, a high draft pick, do the Kangaroos right now need Cameron Zurhaar?
I think they do, in the sense that look, I've got the numbers in front of me. North Melbourne yesterday had 8 top 10 picks. They had 3 teens picks and then 3 picks in the 20. So 8 top 10 picks, right? That has got them only so far. So they need some quality and some consistency and maturity. They let go Ben Mackay last year. They got in a high draft pick for it. Yes, if Zurhaar goes and the salary is really high, they could potentially get pick 1 and pick 2 in this year's draft. You look at St Kilda, we had this discussion before, Joey. They've got 1 top 10 pick. So they play this weekend, North Melbourne versus St Kilda. St Kilda, from a list perspective, looks stuck in middle of the road, where North Melbourne has got all the talent you could possibly ask for. So why are they underperforming so much?
Well, it's their senior players. That's what it is for North Melbourne. The difference between them and West Coast at the moment is their senior players aren't good enough to make them competitive. It's like the Giants and the Gold Coast when they started. They had all these top 10 draft picks. They got beaten every week because they were young and they're talented. But you need your senior players to stand up, and unfortunately, they just don't have them doing that at the moment.
8 figures.
8 figures for Luke Davies-Uniacke.
So tens of millions.
$10+ million, I think.
Try and how many years?
8 to 10. I think he could get a $1.3 million offer times 8 years.
Well, I tell you, he's not staying at North if that's the case.
No.
But they would have.
And he's a good player, but he's not worth that.
Technically, they would have the cash to be able to match it. North Melbourne's salary cap isn't exactly bursting. But when you look at St Kilda, who I mentioned, who need to get the free agents in, they've only got 1 top 10 pick who played yesterday. They need his burst, speed and power. Their midfield is it too harsh, Joe, to say St Kilda has a pedestrian
No, that's fair.
midfield?
That's fair.
A vanilla midfield.
Yeah, compared to the rest of the competition, they're a long way off having star power in there.
He's a Bayside boy, 190 centimetres. He's got the explosiveness. If I was St Kilda, I'd be offering him $10 million. Luke Davies-Uniacke. That's over 8 to 10 years. You don't think he's worth that?
If he's staying at North Melbourne, I don't think he's worth that. But to make him leave, you have to obviously pay them overs.
What about Hugh McCluggage? He hasn't signed yet. We're coming up to the mid-season point of the year. If he hasn't signed yet, that suggests to me that Hugh McCluggage is strongly considering
I'll ask you
leaving.
a question. Would you consider Hugh McCluggage an A-grader?
Yeah, I reckon he's one of the best wingmen in the competition.
One of the best wingmen in the competition. So
Top
not
two
even
or
a
three.
midfielder, he's a wingman.
He's an A-grade midfielder for mine. Mostly a wingman who can go inside.
So you're telling me he leaves and Isaac Smith replaces his spot on the wing? Is this the dominoes we're talking about?
Well, this
Save
is
themselves about 950,000
Yeah.
Good
a
player,
year.
good player, but
You don't think he is?
I don't think
You
he's
better
an
judge.
A-plus guy. I think he's a rung below Bontempelli, Nick Dacos, Lockie Neal, these guys who run through the midfield. I think he's below them.
But
so
he's a wingman,
I
isn't he?
consider them A-graders. Well, look, wingmen are midfielders. It's become a specialised role, but I feel like if Lockie Neal doesn't have a big game, Brisbane struggle through the midfield.
Hugh McCluggage, now with Brisbane in 13th with 2 wins for the year, their percentage is under 100. Hugh McCluggage is not going to sign a deal with Brisbane. He's going to hold off and wait to see what mega offers he gets at the end of the year from clubs like Adelaide, Essendon,
Why is he not happy at Brisbane?
Fremantle. Well, he hasn't signed yet. The Brisbane have been trying to re-sign him for months. What's he holding off for?
Cash.
Well, it's certainly going to come.
1.3 a year. Where does that put Luke Davies-Uniacke in the top highest paid players?
No, it just makes him just about the highest paid player in the competition.
Ooh, it's a good
They're
chat to
about-
have.